Florentino Ariza, the man who awaits 51 years, 9 months and 4 days to repeat his promise of everlasting love, asks the captain of his ship to quarantine it. By hoisting a yellow plague flag, the ship shrugs off its responsibilities of goods, people, merchandise and mail that need to be transported. And all of this because he could be in a state of magical grace with the love of his life, the half-a-century waited lady Fermina Daza. He claims this voyage with her, and only her, could go on, as love does, or perhaps must do, forever. Set around the turn of the 20th century in a continent ravaged by the cholera epidemic, this story titled Love in the Time of Cholera confronts us with what it means to be in love, in all of the choleric dispositions of the heart. And in these times of the corona pandemic, we've also been forced to invent new and perhaps better ways to push the boundaries of what it means to love someone. Love has always been at the center of all art, literature, poetry, beauty, awe, and wonder. The fact that we're still trying to find our own ways to express love in a way that's never previously before seen is a testimony to what Wendell Berry once correctly pointed out about love. In its abundance, it survives our thirst. Or what Alice Oswald, who once imperishably wrote, that love was like everything. And this everything that love encompasses is partly composed of some things, such as a brilliant cup of coffee over an aromatic coffee shop, going out to the movies, or a gentle stroll along a park, or riding around a town in a bicycle, or an innocuous puff for a pint in a bar with your friends and whatnot. But the COVID-19 took over the globe at the rate of knots and forced us to discover love in things and places never before seen. A good start would be within ourselves. In a world where the importance of solitude, which is at the heart of most creative endeavor, has been devalued, the lockdown has given us more time with ourselves than we want, perhaps need. And we find that we're becoming better hobbyists, better cooks, better craftsmen, better musicians, better writers, better educators, heavier sleepers, insatiable eaters, extraordinary memers, efficient cleaners, opening doors within our hearts and minds which we never knew were there. And there's the astonishing joy of scientific collaboration between many countries that have come together to share all the possible information of this disease, to fight off death, to fight for something more celebratory than death, life itself. We've come a long way. A century after the last great pandemic, influenza killed close to 50 million people around the most chauvinistic of times of the world wars. Scientific information privy to one country was seldom shared with other countries, as they were fighting a battle to outdo the others in terms of scientific progress, which often involved making of gas shells, chemical weaponry, aircraft missiles and whatnot, all of which was there to obliterate, not for the defense of humanity. There are many words to be said about the heroic courage and love showered by all the healthcare professionals, working overtime, some of them leaving behind their newly born babies at home, giving up the comfort of their families to fight a disease that can consume they themselves. It takes way more than courage to watch their fellow comrades fall while treating COVID-19 and still go on. How do we surmise the greatness of the fallen medical workers? How to pay homage to the sorrow of their bereaved families? Perhaps taking a leaf out of Shakespeare, who in Macbeth at the death of a valiant soldier tries to console the inconsolable, grieving at the greatness of the deceased when he says, "Your cause of sorrow should not be measured by his greatness, for then it shall have no end." And how do you show our love and respect to the ones still working? By the simplest of ways, by recognizing that love lies in washing hands, in not touching your face with your hands, by accepting that a simple act of staying at home, no matter how pointless or silly it might look, is an act of kindness. When the plague of Black Death stormed over Europe, the plague-stricken people were forcefully locked down in their own houses from the outside, often with their own family members who did not even bear the illness. In a week or two, all of them would die a hideous death, either all of them contracting the disease or by running out of food and water supplies. This is because we didn't know better then. When the mass slaughter of 40,000 dogs and 80,000 cats didn't work to control the plague, people turned on their neighbors and caged them to death in their own houses. But now, centuries later, we know a great deal about our own plague, COVID-19. Keeping our neighborhoods safe and loving our neighbors as ourselves is as simple as keeping a 3 feet distance with them. Who could have predicted that such simple acts of isolation, social distancing, sanitizing, staying put, checking the sources of information before putting it out on social media, learning better ways of engaging yourself with yourself would define love at the time of Corona. In Love in the Time of Cholera, a character named Hildebrand believes that whatever happens to one love affects all the loves throughout the world. This might be an exaggeration on her part, but it is frightening parallels with COVID-19. Take one lover contracted with COVID-19. He or she is likely to transmit it to 2, who will then transmit it to 4, to 8 and 16 and so on. After a mere 33 steps, which is close to half the number of squares in a chessboard, such a progression is likely to affect close to 9 billion people. That is all of them in the world, lovers and non-lovers included. Without proper isolation of the carriers, without quarantine, Hildebrand's pronouncement does come true. But the quarantine has also generated a general air of being stifled without the everyday life of the outside. The only words of consolation might be echoed by the half a century awaiting love of Florentino's mother, who consoles him when his heart breaks by saying, "Take advantage of it now, while you're young, and suffer all you can, because these things don't last forever."